like I don't know 100% if it's true. Talking about Sim Tower, where we're wanting to make this game, and essentially what happened was a guy made this like elevator or simulator, like simulating the traffic flow of elevators. And that's for a lot of programmers, a simulation like that would be fun to make. But it didn't really take the moment to think of like, is this a game they actually wants to play? And what they got was this kind of awkward management simulation game, which is notable for that the primary way to succeed is making yeah, so the second way of dealing with these sorts of blocks, I'd say, is having a diversity of ideas for one thing that you can see a lot. Somebody will be a big fan of one genre of game. You know, they're sold on this. This is the kind of game they want to make. This is the kind of game that they want to play, and they want to make this great whatever action RPG. I don't know, and it's that like they're pulling in all of their ideas from that one genre, and then they come across some stumbling block that maybe a nebulous idea just doesn't line up with these sort of genre that they're used to. And this is not just about consuming one genre of game. This is about like consuming one of anything. You know, you can get ideas from movies, conversations with your friends about whatever, sports, like it doesn't matter. Just like if you have more things happening, there's more inputs going in, like the more interesting outputs you can make, the easier it is to come up with things. And because what comes down to creativity for a lot of people is just taking a bunch of ideas other people have had and just putting them together in different ways. And then I'd say one of the I think in a lot of ways it's most important and is also the biggest block for people when they're hitting these creative blocks. Clear definition of what they want to do. For a lot of my games, a lot of the ideas I work on, things that I do, I sit down and start writing. And this document will have front and center. One of the first things will be like core idea. What is this game about? It's gonna be anything. It'd be like a feeling, maybe just a description of a fun moment that you want the players to have while they're playing, an interesting little story that you want to arise from the mechanics. And having this sort of focus is what really helps you generate these new ideas. And it's really important that these focus, while also being very specific, are general enough and vague enough that you can apply a lot to it. You could, like, for example, a feeling. You could say that this is a game about isolation. Then, boom, there's so much that you can pull out of that, but it still gives you that one word, laser focus on what you can do next. You hear about like writers. I'll talk about how when they're writing characters and what they're doing, the characters will just write themselves. They just think like, what would this character do as a person? And they just write the next thing that they're going to do. And they're like, yeah, it just flowed out. Like I didn't have to think about what was going to happen next. It's just the characters did it. When you have that really solid, pinpointed idea, a lot of your design decisions can come out of the same thing, where you can start saying like, okay, I'm having trouble deciding what should happen in this situation. I'm having trouble deciding how to expand upon this mechanic, set up this level, whatever. And with that, you should always be having that laser focus idea, that theme, that core concept that you can flip back to and say, does my decision support that idea? How can I expand on this? How can I change this in a way that supports that idea? And I find that, like, if you have a really strong core theme, a really strong core idea to your game, then it's a lot easier to figure out what that next thing should be. Then you can get a long way on that, but at some point you can easily hit that block of mechanic. It conflicts horribly with my story, conflicts horribly with this or that, or I just don't know what would work for this. Or maybe you just didn't really have much of a focus at all. You're saying, I'm just going to make an arcade game or whatever. And it just, you never have that fallback. You never have that fallback that when you hit that block, you can say, this game was about this. Are my decisions supporting that idea? I think that, like, that is one of the most important safety nets you can have creatively. So just when you're hitting that creative block, you should be assessing. Like I said, one, are you working on the right project? Is this the right project for you at all? Question firmly yes, and you start saying, what is this project about? And the more other things you're bringing in, the more easily you can answer things like, what is this game about? And the better answers you have to those questions, the more you thought about those things, you'll find that those creative blocks will happen a lot less, and you'll be able to get through them a lot more easily.
With future of HVRE/stream.
Shylo, woo. Okay.
My dream.
How do I switch over? I think all of you know, if not all of you, most of you know that we've been running a little program through RunJumpDev called HVRE. And I'm here to talk about what the future of HVRE is and our next project. So just in case you don't know what we are, we're HVRE, hands-on virtual reality experience. We're a community here in Lexington giving people to get hands-on experience making VR in a fun and entertaining setting. What we want to do is help you grow as a developer, give you hands-on experience, help build a community of VR developers and VR enthusiasts in Lexington, and maybe even make Lexington a place to do VR and keep people here instead of letting them keep moving away. Have done over the last 2 years and ongoing. In 2015, we started with Haunted Pixels. it was a small chaotic scope. And what I mean by that is that we decided at the last minute that we wanted to do a VR game, and we did it in a month and a half. And we did do it, and it was amazing. We learned so much from it, and it was a great experience, but I think we all went a little crazy. So lesson learned, the next year, we decided to start way sooner. And we started in March with more Mansion, which was a much larger organized, a lot more people and a lot more time to work on it. We met every single week. We had some amazing talent, some very driven people, and I think I can speak for everybody when I say we learned a lot and we got better. And we have been building tools and a community here, and we want to continue doing that. So the first one was for the Gear VR and a wheelchair. The second one we did for an HTC Vive room scale, showed at Lex Play. And Dreams is our next big goal, which is going to be a small and medium organized scope. And I'll kind of explain that here in a second. Basically, it's going to be a lot of individuals and small teams working together over a 3-month period. So we're going to reduce the amount of time in hopes of being able to do more projects. So maybe do more iterations throughout the year. We are going to aim for Rules and Play, which is going to be this summer. 2 single night showings at Rules and Play using the Vive, and then a long showing at Rules and Play using a PC and Google Cardboard. So with that in mind, what is Dreams? So you and your team or your team. So we're going to encourage people to do this individually, but if you really want to work in a small team, that's okay too. You're going to interpret what the theme means to you, Dreams. And this is your project, but there are guidelines that you must follow. Your project will be included in and entered through a virtual gallery. So think of an art gallery. It must be able to be played only using look controls and possibly a single button so that it can be viewed on a Google Cardboard. Now, this includes we're going to include things that aren't VR games, but any of the non-VR games will need to have similar controls. It must be able to run on a cardboard. This means conservative geometry, reducing draw calls, etc. Also means creating the smallest files possible since there will be multiple experiences. So these are some pretty tight guidelines, but I think it's sort of necessary for the scope and time that we have. Just suggestions right now. When we get the group together and talking, we'll go over it a little bit more and massage it if it needs it. If you don't want to develop for VR, we will include you in the portion of the gallery where people can play your experience or game on a virtual monitor, much like the PC experience. So kind of like Netflix and the Gear VR headset, where you go into a room and you're going to sit at a virtual desk and play a virtual game. If you can manage the scope, you can add the HTC Vive control options. So we want to give you the option to make the game as much as you want it to be if you can manage the scope. But the important thing there is managing scope. Your team will be applying management skills in addition to your design and development skills. So you will be brainstorming and developing your ideas on paper first. You'll plan and present your initial scope and milestones. You'll report weekly on the forums about your progress to get help and feedback from your peers and the guides that are helping out with the projects. You'll present monthly to the group on your milestones and decisions about your project for constructive feedback so that we can all learn throughout this process. We'll collaborate with other developers through the Dev Exchange, which I'll talk about in a moment, and you'll create a work of art and a portfolio piece that will speak volumes on multiple skills and abilities. We are developing a system called the Dev Exchange, and you might have seen a little bit of this at the Global Game Jam, and I'm sorry I had to leave and I didn't get to come back on the last day. I was sick. But people were pretty up to helping each other out. I didn't see as many people using the credits, but it was a very short period of time. So I think given the opportunity, you might utilize that a little bit more over a longer period of time. The basic premise behind it is that names, talents, and abilities and contact information will be listed on a forum. And if you need help, you can go to this forum. You can look for the talent or ability that you need help with. You can contact that person through the network, negotiate with them for their time, either in exchange for your own time to help them or using the dev credits, and then you'll package what you need to give them and communicate with them and help you need. So hopefully this will be something for people to work outside of the box a little bit. I know that a lot of us feel very insulated on our projects, and this is something that we want to open up to more than just the VR people. Hopefully with RunJumpDev in general, this might help all of us get a little bit of help on the projects that we're working on when we need it. Anyway, that's it. Hope to see you all. Keep an eye on us. We have a website. It's HVRE. I'll have to give it to you. It's on the RunJumpDev website. They've got a link to it, and it has been updated for Dreams. So if we'll be continuing to update that as we get closer to. Not yet, but I know there's a link on there somewhere, and we'll get a better link to the website so that it's easier to find, because I can't even remember the Wix name. It's ridiculous. But anyway, so keep an eye on us as we get a little bit closer, and we'll let you guys know when we're having our first meetings and getting that all set up. But in the meantime, be thinking about your dreams.
Woo! Yes. Well,
I need to talk to him.
oh,
You're next.
yeah, I'm next. I need to project. Well, projector's already on. I just need to log into my Gmail account. All right, cool. I'm finally back in there.
All right.
Give me a few minutes, my friends, please. You're almost ready. How's everybody's day so far? Yes, I am. Crap. Yeah. Yeah, it's the only way to make sure. Yeah.
What did you have for breakfast?
What's your mother's maiden name?
What did your mother have for breakfast?
Leonard, don't actually tell us your mother's maiden name.
I almost did. I was like, for a second, I was like, I should know this, right?
You should know that.
Yeah.
You shouldn't announce it.
There are things. There are ways. All righty. Is there a way to? Oh, that should make that go away. Ha. So. Yeah. They got slides. Very cheap, so I can do it and everything. It makes it worthwhile. No, I'm going to read off the document, which is goes along with this. Because I wrote something, I don't want to read just from the screen and everything. I want to give other information that I would like to give and stuff like that. I will say originally that this talk was called The Magical Rule of VR Development and Why It Drives Me Crazy. But then as I was doing it, I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to be more calmer about it and everything and not go all crazy. So it just became The Magical Rule of VR Development. So as I'm loading this up, hi, welcome. I'm glad you are able to be here to hear me talk, possibly, and make sense, hopefully. Who am I and why I'm doing this? My name is Leonard Wedderburn. I'm a local dev from Lexington. I've been working in VR for about a year and a half to now. Now 4 years through RunJumpDev and all that stuff. Did you just sign in? Yes, I did. In doing VR development for a while, I've learned a couple of things. This new medium has created so many new ways to entertain folks that I don't believe we scratch the surface of what's possible. In the VR world, there are leaders in hardware. Crap. VR, the Rift, and the PSVR. Right now, these are the top VR headsets that are out right now, based upon this information. Well, based on the information about what Dev actually focused out just recently on the Game of the Future, like snapshot of the industry, you see that HTC Vive, Rift, Gear VR, and PlayStation VR are the ones that most focused on. Unfortunately, they try to treat all that apply, and everything's over 100%. Don't like it, but anyway, that's sad as well. But yeah, you see right here that devs are focused on VR development, so that's really good to see. And everything. All these headsets and everything. So for PC, you have the Vive and the Rift, but for console, mobile, Gear VR, and then console, the PSVR. So there are differences between each type of headset. Difference of developing for them are different, and also VR, the Vive, and everything. That's actually just for standing. This is for room scale VR. So, question is, what does that mean for us as developers? What does that mean when we actually create the experience? Let's go into the past a little bit. So, there are so many genres of games that are out that are, I mean, it's kind of amazing how many actually ideas and everything that people created. Pretty much things, first person, third person, and side scrolling. Super Mario Brothers side scrolling. Also, but then you have a third person, which was Super Mario Sunshine. That's the one I just pulled up. I was like, I'm surprised I remember it. In seeing these type of gameplay, the player is able to see what's going on via a camera on the screen somewhere. And they have a set way of seeing the world. So this is what we are used to. This is stuff that we're actually used to seeing in games and everything. Please cut that part out. Of course, sometimes you gotta find stuff in games, but pretty much everything is actually right in front of you. Because everything, you see everything that's going on or whatnot, but still in games you have to find stuff. But for VR, completely different. So based on the hardware that you saw before, you're able to move your head and see the world around you. You become the character and everything. That's a big difference than what we see in the past. Our goal in creating is to create a completely immersive environment to have you right in the world. I feel like you actually left this world and entered the one that we created. For new devs getting into VR, before we looked at those games that we've done in the past, based on their experience, they offer advice to those that can start working, so they can start working on their own games. What we discovered quickly in creating VR games was that there are some things possibly we're not ready for, things we possibly shouldn't do. And like this video will show that. So you see a first thing, also a couple things about this video. This is the DK1 Oculus Rift headset. And also he's standing. Bad idea, as you'll see why in a few seconds.
You know, there is actually a VR roller coaster, full on.
Yeah.
Where VR headsets are.
Which is awesome.
Yeah. What? Okay. Actually, it's just a little bit long and everything, so I wasn't exactly sure. It's fine. It's gonna give me time to catch up on actually what I'm trying to read. So you see right now that he's actually like scrunching up, preparing himself and stuff like that. He should be sitting down or whatnot. He knows he's going to do it. So his reaction is what happens whenever you actually have somebody that is not used to actually moving and actually that's not moving and they're actually seeing what's going on visually and everything. He's falling down and everything, and visually, audibly, he's in that world right now, and that's what he's experiencing. So this is really like a good way of like immersion and everything, but it's just so. But yeah. 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 So
I'm leaving, guys.
That's what happens when you create that type of experience and everything. But like I said, that was a DK1 old headset, and also he wasn't sitting, which he should be. So, in talking about this talk, the name of the talk is "What's the Magical Rule in VR Development?" So, what's the magic rule in VR development? Oh crap! Oh shoot!
What?
There are no rules in VR development. You should keep your shirt on though, if you want to. But seriously, yes, there are no rules when it comes to VR development. So seriously, yes, but there are guidelines. Actually, suggestions from Google Cardboard Development, they posted about it was that like to make sure that if you render a 2D splash screen in a 3D space, make sure to do that. The UI is not doesn't follow the headset movement and everything. Always maintain head tracking. Player is moving his head, you should be seeing exactly what's going on. User controls the amount of movement. Don't move the player unless they're able to actually control it, which actually is interesting. That also goes along with use constant velocity as well. They actually keep a constant velocity, just stop them or move them fast and go back and forth. So these are just guidelines, but they're actually only like there's many ways of these guidelines being found each day. There are many guidelines being found each day as people like discover and actually create VR entertainment. And so why did I say there are no rules? Because guidelines are not rules. There are many games that break these type of guidelines, but folks still play them. The thing is that because of there's so many examples, I mean, of guidelines in which people don't focus on, and they're still able to create those experiences that people actually enjoy. Also, VR development takes longer than regular development of games. We're still trying to figure out what works and doesn't work. But yes, we have been told as VR developers to break the rules and see what's new. We can't stay on the same path as before because this is a new medium. Originality and creativity are more important than ever now for VR developers to make sure that we're actually creating something and going beyond what we see in the past. It's only very young. It's only been going on for 4 years now. So we have just only started to figure out what we can and cannot do. Too long, didn't listen. There are so many new headsets that Dev have coming out to create wonderful new content for it. There's a new headset coming out at GDC from Microsoft, which costs about $300, which is completely different. It's going to use 6 degrees of movement and everything. It'll be quite incredible. HoloLens, no. It uses HoloLens technology, but it's kind of very different. Games of the past are very different from VR content being created now. Being able to launch a player into a world is a whole new way of being able to be creative. It's just a whole different thing than the games in the past. And there's no rules to VR development, only guidelines. It's best to follow guidelines, but they can be broken and still enjoyed. We're going to have to figure out what we can and cannot do, honestly. Right now, though, you can do anything. Like I said before in the beginning, we've only started to scratch the surface of what's actually possible for VR. It's a long road ahead for what we got to create. Thank you very much for listening. I know I kind of ramble on a little bit. I'm sorry about that. My phone went cooperate with me possibly and other things. You can find me at KTP for Life on Twitter, and that's my email address in case you want to contact me about development. All right. Thank you. Also, I'm getting out of my email so that y'all can see my email. Ah, there we go. Thank you very much. No, it was incognito. It's all gone.
They are like everything in my mouth now tastes like, right? Like sugary wax.
Do you have HDMI?
Do I have the cord?
No, you have HDMI.
Yes. I think that's. That looked alarming. Should I move this like over there? Hi. My name's Amanda Hudgens. I'm a social media person for RunJumpDev. I also super hate talking in front of people, like unbelievably hate talking in front of people, unless it's on a stage because then I can't see you. Then it's perfectly fine, but I can see all of y'all. So, yeah, so today's talk, I was gonna do some really basic social media rundown stuff because I'm not entirely sure y'all know how to use it. So that's my job. So I guess the general thing to talk about would be, and actually, here's the thing. If you have any questions, please just ask me now, because otherwise this is going to be over in 30 seconds when I panic and run away. So this is the RunJumpDev Twitter account. This is our primary social media account. There's a couple of like minor things on it that are kind of important for like establishing like brand, and they're just kind of like stuff to stick around with. So like, for example, it has a really nice big header image. Even on like your phone, that header image is still there. If you look at it really closely, which you can kind of do because it's the entire screen, you'll notice that it's not like weird and like off angle and stuff, but also that it's an image with like one simple thing of text in the middle. It's not like, it's like 13 different quotes on it and like, here's my cool game and here's all this other stuff. Yeah, don't do that. The thing is most people aren't gonna look at your header on a screen this size. Most social media engagement happens on your phone. And so the header is about this big. And if you work this on your phone, but I kind of just really bold graphic statements, and that social media presence in general is big, bold pixels and things like that. So not so much like, here's pictures of people. Like, every time someone talks to you, it's right there, but it's small. So that's another thing, like don't use that either because nobody's gonna see it. It's gonna be at times, I think the smallest it gets is like 60 by 60 pixels. That's tiny. Like if you put a bunch of junk in that, nobody's gonna see it. It's gonna look awful. Here is our handle and our, this is handle. Handle is the way people talk to you. This is our description. Short, sweet, has a link to our meetup page. Why does it have a link to our meetup page? Because Twitter only allows me one link to a website, which is this. That's our actual website. So our meetup page is another relevant, interesting thing. It used to have hashtag GameDevKentucky because Louisville used to retweet everything with hashtag GameDevKentucky in it, and it was just handy to be able to say, hey, if you check this out, this is all GameDevKentucky. Now it's just our meetup page because they don't do that anymore. If you scroll, I'm also looking at this from the perspective of somebody who runs the account. That means that this big thing in the corner there, that's our impressions on the last week. We have been seen 8,600 times, which is not bad. It's not great. Personally, on my own private account, I get more, but I mean, I'm better. I'm joking. I have more followers, which is the actual case. And we'll get into that in a second, why that is. But so you look here, this is all of our images. One of the big things I do with RunJumpDev and any social media account I manage is in images. You'll notice that they're all relatively simple, with the exception of this one because it's from the talk we're currently at, because I am currently live tweeting the talk we are at. So like this is relative. This is about as complicated as I like to get, outside of just images of people. Here's this image. Almost all of our social media images, with very small exceptions, are 600 by 600 pixels. Why? Because Facebook doesn't resize anything under 600 by 600 image. Like 600 by 600 is the Facebook sizing. So it's a perfect square. Facebook will pull anything that's larger than 600 by 600. It'll squash anything that's bigger. 600 by 600. There's about 100 pixels either direction, but it's a good middle ground. So you'll also notice that everything is kind of in the center. That's because if you're looking at it on mobile, on Twitter, it chops the top and the bottom half off. I think there's an algorithm in Twitter. It actually picks out the most important part of the image, but it decides what the most important part of the image is. And it's usually wrong. So if you make it so that there aren't a lot of things for it to look at, it decides correctly, because there's no other choice. But that means if somebody's looking at this on mobile, it's going to be like that. Twitter, I'm also totally fine with using not 600 by 600 because they correct for square. Facebook doesn't because it's awful. Facebook is the worst. We'll get into Facebook in a second, but it's basically the worst. So these are all the images. Now, we have a totally reasonable follower count. It's not great, but it's pretty good. And that's because our actual following is 80. We basically only follow people who are in Kentucky or game dev or who have spoken with us before. That's why our follower count's low. Our following count is super high comparatively. It's a good ratio to have. My follower count's higher because I follow more people, but we don't need to follow other people. So with an organization of this size, if we follow too many people, it's going to be seen as an endorsement. And nobody's looking at the back end of this account. Like if I go to home, which is like our regular timeline feed that you as a personal Facebook user use, I don't actually know who most of these people, I don't, like Ancestry, I think that's a tweet. But this is Alan Cook from Louisville. But that's basically it. Sorry, he's in Lexington. Sorry, correction. But I was confusing him with Alan, who is from Louisville. But like that is kind of what I'm saying though, is like this, I never look at this. I run this account every day. I don't look at this. What do I look at? I look at Hootsuite. This is Hootsuite. This is every account I manage. All of them. This is RunJumpDev's backend, LexPlay, the Lexitron. Ignore the thing on the bottom with the Lexitron. Everyone still thinks the Lexitron's a porn star. I can't dissuade them of that. This is my personal account. This is Vector, and this is SuperSoul. So this is every account I run. And this is what I actually look at if I'm looking at feeds. These are actually all the mentions. So whenever there's like 3 main ways that someone can interact with your account. They can talk to you, they can share, they can like. I don't care about likes, they don't matter. Just in terms of like spreading or visibility, but for actual interaction with the customer or with a client or with a fan, mentions is where it's at. So this is when someone talks to you. but this is the actual way that I post things. So this is publisher for Hootsuite. It's free up to 3 accounts. You will probably never need more than that. And we'll get into that in like 2 seconds, but you'll never need more than like 2 accounts. Why? Because you don't, if you're developing something, to make a separate account for a game, I promise you, you don't need one. If you do need one, you need one because you're hiring someone like me to run that account. But you personally probably don't need one. I almost exclusively advise people not to make them for games, especially small independent titles, which is what most of us are making. But this is Scheduler. It's on the back end of Hootsuite. Hootsuite is free. So let's say, let's do a brief one real quick. Shh. No offense.
Don't make me listen to myself.
Yeah, that's why I got rid of it. So like today we have this talk here. Shut up. We have this talk here. This is the Hyper-Late Drifter talk that was last month. So this came out today. So what we're going to do is we're going to schedule it. So what that means is we have this drop-down menu, this link here, and then shrink it and then say, thank you. Oh, nope. Got too excited. Okay, one more thing.
Pass.
Huh?
Past.
Yep, thank you. I don't normally do this looking at from this angle. Okay, so first things first, scheduling. Where will we schedule it? It's easy to just like throw something out. There are 3 main times that you want to schedule something in general. They are noon, 7 p.m., 9 p.m. in your specific time zone block. Why is that? Those are the times that have the heaviest traffic on most social media. That's lunch, so that's when people who are at work are suddenly on their phones, not working. 7 p.m. is right before dinner, 9 p.m. is right after, like it's kind of like that. I don't know exactly what it lines up with, but those are the 3 times. You notice there's actually also a time when movies happen, is 12, 4, 7, 9. You probably don't want to post at 4. That's when parents are picking up their kids from school and kids are getting off school and like, it's a horrible time. Nobody posts then. But these are kind of your big times. So where do we want to post this? This is a tweet. We'll probably post it tomorrow at noon because that seems like a good time. And we don't have anything going out then. So this will go on RunJumpDev. Now, this is almost done. It's not. Why is it not done? There's no picture. Almost every social media thing has pictures. Why? Because people engage with pictures. There's a sliding scale of things people engage with on social media. Videos is higher because they autoplay. That's kind of skewed, but they still autoplay. People look at things that autoplay. But after that is pictures, then links, then video, then text. So what do? I have something that has all 3. So it's going to have an image. I especially make most of my images. Yeah. Well, actually, let's do the one I made. That's the. So that's a picture. It says it's actually the oh no. Be nice. So it's actually this image right here. It's not a great social media image, but it tells you that it's on YouTube, and it matches up with the image you're about to go to. It's not my favorite, but it'll work. So this is now ready to go. I have the name. I have the person who I think is most likely to share it and who's in it, which is Teddy Deef. And then I'm going to click schedule. There you go. And so now I have that up and running. This will let me post to Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, Twitter. I mostly, for RunJumpDev's purposes, and really for most of y'all, you're only going to want to post on Twitter and Facebook. Tumblr has a decent setting for game dev, but Tumblr, there's too many tools inside Tumblr. I'm going to use it. exclusively, which is no fun. Really. Yeah, but yeah, like this for the entire week, I left gaps in this week because I knew that we'd have the Global Game Jam video that I just finished yesterday and the Teddy D video. I knew both of those were coming out, so I left gaps in the schedule. So tomorrow I'll probably set up for Global Game Jam video to go out. Post about once a day on Facebook, unless you're Blizzard, in which case you can post once every other hour, but you're not Blizzard. Because what that's going to do is that's going to make people unfollow you almost across the board. I would unfollow you. You would unfollow you. If you were posting once an hour, you would unfollow you. So the average shelf life of a tweet is 2 minutes. Does that mean you should post every 30 minutes? No, you should not. Do not do that. A lot of people do. It's a huge mistake. It makes people hate you. Don't do that. I post twice a day. 3 times if I'm feeling really busy, but twice, really. So 2 tweets, one 2 tweets, 1 Facebook post a day. Sometimes more, sometimes less. In the rev up for Vector, I'll post twice a day on Facebook. I'll double it because Vector is coming up and I'm like, oh, we're psyched. And then this isn't even covering what you do for events. Yes.
So, you just post some of the same things over and over, give like a cycle, or is it you try to always have unique content each time you post?
So currently, so what we do is, so for RunJumpDev, because we don't have a lot of things going on right now, like we're always doing something. Like we have regular Tuesday night meetings. I would have this up here, but it's not, but Tuesday night was last night. But for example, every Tuesday night at noon or between noon and 1, a post will go out saying, regular meeting tonight at 7, come out, or 6:30, I think. So regular meeting at 6:30, come out, do this, game dev Kentucky, etc. Very short picture, no link. So that goes out every Tuesday. But other than that, it just depends on what's happening. So this week was this, reminders that Vector is a thing, because we're going to probably announce the dates. We already announced the dates, but we're probably going to announce like speaker stuff this week. And or in mind, but what that means is there's going to be 5 unique Facebook posts. Facebook posts are always unique. But what that also means, I post twice a day on Twitter, so I randomize the Twitter posts. So if at noon on, with the exception of, there's a duplicate, or usually I'll post about the Patreon in addition, because the Patreons always need some attention, but it's not always in my 5. So if I post 5 in the week and then 5 in the evening, like 5 during the day and 5 in the evening, then it'll be probably only about 5 or 6 unique things, but they're repeated. But I always make sure that there's a day in between. So you're not like getting up at noon, seeing something, and then later on that day, seeing it at 7. You've already seen that content. But hopefully if you're catching multiple people, if there's a separation and you're catching someone who maybe isn't always on at noon, but they are occasionally on at 7, that's the idea anyway. This is all like the super basic social media stuff. Like I do this in counting, making all the images. I do this in probably an hour every Monday for hour and a half, depending. If I can do it, you can definitely do it. Like it's super, super easy. I can do it practically in my sleep. I used to do this for this specific thing for 14 different NCAA fan sites at once. I could do that in 2 hours on a Monday, because that's all the same content. I would spend like one day making 16 different images of dudes running around with footballs, and then you save them into a giant folder and then you drop them off, and nobody can tell the difference, except for the one time I used the wrong color of blue. That was from the dark year where I had to pretend to care about, oh dear. I just really don't care about sports. But that's the thing, right, is that you can do this if you don't care about the thing. So if you do care about the thing, you can definitely do it. It's really, really easy, like I promise. But it's also like, it's also tied to a pre-existing structure of things that exist. I've made this stuff for years. So I know that that's probably a little harder. And it's also connected to, let's say, a really awesome YouTube page, which you should totally check out because I've been working on it a lot. And like, we make specific Twitter accounts for some things. Like Vector has a specific Twitter account, LexPlay has a specific Twitter account, but they also have different followers. So somebody who's going to Vector might not necessarily care about game development in Central Kentucky. They probably don't. But somebody who's attending LexPlay probably cares a lot more about speedrunning, I guess, than they do about us. But yeah, I've probably gone super way over. But yeah, also my mouth is super dry because I keep forgetting I have a drink. Okay, I'm done. John's just letting me talk so he doesn't have to.
Yeah, ran out of time.
Oh no.
All right, let's see if this works. Right. Where's my mouse? Oh. How do I extend? All right. Well, we'll just drag it over here. So I'm going to talk about Unity performance in your games in Unity. It's kind of been what I've been doing lately is working on just improvement in performance for several games that we're working on. So I just wanted to, really, I can't talk about in detail a lot of things, but maybe just give you some things to look for, maybe on Unity's site or to Google, so you can kind of get more details. But here's an intro. So, so here's my scene. I've got like 1,500 cubes in my scene. And what I want to do is just kind of show you, for one, is like to see the performance of that game. So in the corner of your game tab, you can pull up some information about you know, your stats. So in this case, it's running at 17 frames per second. So we're not hitting our 60 FPS kind of goal here. And let's see, so if I actually run it here, I'm able to move around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the profiler. So this is a really cool, where is it? There it is. So profiler is it's over here on this other tab. So the profiler is a sort of a graphical representation of the delays in your processing the game. So if I hit play, it's going to run, and kind of you can see over there the graph, and each one of those is a frame in your game for the rendering. So, and I can kind of cycle through each frame, and in this case, the green here is the rendering time, and the blue is processing time. And so what I can do, let's maximize this here. So I can kind of go through the different frames and see spikes in frames. So line to be down below this 60 FPS, right? Right now it's up closer to the 15 frames per second. So what I can see is I can look, say, in this case, there's a lot of blue going on, which is a lot of processor code running. So what I want to do is look at, here's the totals. I can kind of go in this graph and expand. And there's this one that's taking 30% of the processing of the whole frame. So it's, of course, my intentionally horrible bad code over here. So let's see. In this case, it really doesn't matter, but I'm just looping over, this 10,000 or 100,000 times and changing the position. I'm not even changing the position. I'm just assigning it back. So there's all kinds of reasons. Well, this is pointless code, but it slows it down just because you're accessing the transform object a bunch of times. So if I just take that out, because it maybe doesn't matter anymore, it's not really doing anything. So it's going to recompile here. And in this case, I've intentionally made a really bad code. But in your case, when you're actually using this, you can identify which piece of your code is taking up all your time. So as you can see now, I'm way closer to my 60 FPS goal here. All that blue's gone, basically. So that's one thing, is the profiler. So another thing is to look at rendering. So a really cool way to do that, the frame debugger. So if I click it here, again, everything keeps coming up on this other screen. So the frame debugger lets you kind of see all of the commands that are going to the graphics card. So the draw calls, is that a call? So in this case, let's see, I'm going to, where did my mouse go? So here are all the draw commands that are going to the graphics card. And so as you can see, I've got, 1,700, 1,800 draw calls. And as you can see, this is sort of all the commands as it's drawing. So these are doing stuff like lighting passes. So it's kind of doing lighting. And it's doing once per cube. Remember, I had 1,500 cubes. And then, so you can kind of see, let's maybe do page down. There's so many. It's sort of drawing the whole lighting pass for these cubes. And there's a draw pass where it's drawing each one of these in, right? But you can see each one of these is a command that's happening. So ideally, you want to have as few of these as possible. You want them to send, one command, say, draw the whole scene. But that's not possible, but you can reduce it to as many as you can. And so this tells you what's happening, how many they're processing are happening. If you're writing custom shaders, you can see the passes and all that. So this is a great way to see that. In my case, one of the things that I could do is these are all not marked as static objects. So that if you mark things as static, so I put all my cubes under one parent here. So I can check static on that and then change all my children to be static. So Unity is able to do additional improvements to the performance if you say this is static and doesn't move around, and it's always going to be here in the same place. So like maybe your trees or your mountains and stuff, your walls in a building are pretty much usually static, and they can get improved performance by marking that as static. And so now, if I run this again, all right, so let's see if I can click the enable button again. And now I'm down to 23 draw calls, because what it does is, you can see the static batches here. It's able to combine all of those static objects into one or a couple big objects essentially, and draw them all at once. So it's like, there's a few, and then it draws all those in. So that's, you know, ideally you want to have as few of these as possible. So one trick is to mark things as static. Another is like with lighting. When you have things as static, you can bake that lighting in. Lighting is really expensive, so baking in lighting is one thing to explore. I won't do that now because it takes forever to bake, but there's all kinds of options with playing with that and improving performance. And then the last thing was, say, occlusion culling. So occlusion culling allows you, the renderer, to decide what it's going to actually basically kind of compute the lines of the view lines. So if I'm looking in this direction, sort of what things am I able to see? So let's go back here and let's close the frame debugger profiler. So window, let's go back and see the scene. Okay, so here's my scene. Here's all these objects. And what I can do, that's actually clear. So I can bake, when I have the occlusion culling, you can kind of see where it builds a set of cubes, so that when it runs, it's actually kind of determining the line of sight. And so normally, what it does is it actually disables those objects when it's viewing. So based on that, it calculates what objects are visible, and it actually sort of disables the rendering of those objects. So it kind of breaks down your scene into those cubes, kind of, and says, can this cube see this other cube, and should those things be active? So it's another thing, occlusion culling, that can help with performance, especially, say, if you have lots of complex things in different rooms, and really you're never able to see, you know, them at the same time. You can turn on or use occlusion culling to eliminate that whole, you know, other room that's not visible at this time. So, all right. So those are some, you know, ideas for performance and with your game in Unity. Definitely, there's all kinds of resources and videos on Unity's site, or you can ask me questions. But I think that concludes this month's RunJumpDev meeting. Let's see. So definitely follow us at runjumpdev.org and on Facebook, and then also our RunJumpDev website has all kinds of information as well about new events happening. Let's see, what's next? What about Vector? Vector? Yeah, Vector is probably the next big thing. We're going to be Move Arcade Expo is in March. As firm speakers and scheduling stuff, but be on the lookout for that. All right, thanks. You can get up to, I was getting 100 frames per second. I'm not sure why the book wasn't showing up. Let's see. Let's see if it happens now. No, it actually looks at the cubes, right? So it uses the cubes, and they'll turn off. They're just not turning off right now.
That's weird.
But yeah.